Okay. Welcome to the PeoplePath webinar. We are excited to talk about how to successfully launch a corporate alumni program. We have a lot to get through today. It'll be a great conversation here with Danya, who I'll introduce in just a second. We, of course, encourage conversation and questions. So if at any point you have question, comments, concerns, anything, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I will be moderating as we go. But to kind of dive in here a little bit, we know that some of you are very new to PeoplePath, and so you might not know, or maybe you do know, but we love to say it anyway. Our philosophy is very strong. We believe it every single day that we are working with clients, that lifelong relationships are the foundation for mutual success. And what that means to us is that your success is our success. And so we like to approach our clients with a partnership kind of view. And so we are here to help and make sure that things are going not only great with the platform, but that you are succeeding in your program overall. And a little bit about PeoplePath, if it is something that is not super familiar to you. We have quite the long history. Basically, starting in 1995, Tony Audino started the Microsoft Alumni Network as an alum himself of Microsoft, and then moved on to create Canenza, which was the first platform that he had to manage corporate alumni programs. Around the same time, a few years earlier, Stefan and Benjo created IntroWorlds, and so got started there, creating a competitor, or at least another platform, and then joined together in 2020 to create PeoplePath. And we are 4 years in and stronger and bigger than ever, with an amazing group of people behind the scenes. There's about 65 of us worldwide. We are primarily in Seattle, Munich, Pilsen in the Czech Republic, and London in the United Kingdom. I am luckily based in San Diego, so we kind of cover everywhere all over the place. And we are the top vendor for corporate alumni software. And we have years and years and years and hundreds of clients of experience to bring to the table. So we just love our history and where we've come, and where we're going is also very exciting. But the reason for the season is that we are here to talk about launching a corporate alumni program. And so we created a how to launch guide years ago, and we really tore it down to the studs and created it in our modern times and relaunched it earlier this year. So if you are not yet familiar with this guide, we do suggest downloading it, taking a look. There's something for everyone in this, whether you're just starting out or have had a program for many years. Either way, there's probably some nuggets to kind of think through and go back and take a look at. If you haven't yet downloaded it, this is kind of the meat of what's in it. There's a slight introduction, which just kind of talks about PeoplePath a little bit and just how to get started, what to think about. And then going step by step, we have planning, preparing, launching, and excelling. So in the plan stage, it's really just how do you get started, what questions to ask, who to go to, think about building a business case, all that kind of fun stuff. Moving into the prepare stage, so maybe getting ready to launch a platform, or just going through implementation, or just kind of thinking about what the program will do. And then once it launches, what does that look like? How do you launch? How do you create an offboarding process that complements and helps the alumni program grow? And then excelling. So once you have launched, how you can make sure that you're measuring your success, that you've built plans for continued success, and to see how that goes over time. And then there's additional reading in there. So highly recommend downloading it. We'll also send it out with the recording and the slides from this webinar if you haven't gotten it yet. So that's a little bit about us. That's as much as I think we'll kind of dive into, but I'm more excited to get into introducing our amazing guest speaker here. So we have Danya Ray from Seyfarth. She has an incredible amount of experience. So Danya, please introduce yourself.
Hi guys, thanks for coming. I'm sure I see a lot of familiar faces. There are some that I don't see, but I have been in the corporate alumni world for, oh my God, I almost want to say 7 years. And before that, I was at Columbia Law School back in 2011, focusing on their alumni program. And I have implemented and launched 3 corporate alumni programs since 2017. So I built and launched Verisk, which is a data analytics company, and then Greenberg Targ, which is another global law firm. And like Jen said before, I'm now at Seyfarth and just launched and well, I built and launched their program about 2 years ago. And all the programs that I did build, I actually built with PeoplePath. And before before it was PeoplePath, it was Cadenza. So like I feel as if I'm just so like OG that I've been working with Cadenza and PeoplePath since I want to say like 2017. So yep, feel free to reach out if you have any other questions, but that's just a high level about me.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, actually, we met in 2017 in the woods in Montana. We were
Yeah.
at the time kind of getting started. I was managing the global alumni program for Oliver Wyman, a consulting firm. So we were both just kind of getting started at the same time. So it's cool to see where we are, what, 9 years later, 6 years later, 8 years later. I can't do math.
Yeah.
But either way, it's very exciting to see where things kind of have come and all that experience, like just launching with different firms, even though you're using the same platform, like there's probably a lot of different ways that have happened. So we'll kind of dive into that further. But and then to slowly introduce myself as I've kind of dropped little things here and there. I am Jen Peedy. I am the Vice President of Customer Advocacy for PeoplePath. So I work with our clients like Danya to just help with best practices, research, share what's happening across other programs, and do events like this. So webinars, and we had our event in New York in person last week or 2 weeks ago. So always here to answer questions for clients or even non-clients. So please do feel free to get in touch with either myself or Danya. And we'll share this again at the end, but want to dive in a little bit, thinking about this in the way that our guide is set up. So that planning, preparing, launching, and excelling. So we'll kind of go in order of those questions. But like I said, if you have any questions throughout, please do feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get to them when there's a natural break. But we'll also have time at the end, so you can either save them for the end or when it makes sense. I will kind of stop sharing my screen here. But let's get into the preparing. So Danya, you have built these programs, these 3 programs you've talked about in 3 different places. So like kind of getting started, how have you identified key stakeholders or executive sponsors to kind of help you champion a program?
Sure. So it's interesting because all the 3 law firms or companies that I worked for, they were all newly created alumni roles. Like they've never had an alumni program before. So the decision was made before I joined the firm, and I was hired to plan, prepare, and launch the network from scratch. I want to say that historically, law firms viewed alumni programs as a nice to have, but now they're seen as a need to have. And it always comes from, I want to say it always comes from the top, right? Like our chair and executive committee recognize the importance of this initiative, and they've been extremely supportive, and really happy that this is like thriving within our firm.
That's awesome. So how did you kind of decide, or when did you decide what your primary goal was for your programs?
Um, that's a great question because again, I'm just going to keep going back to where I currently work, which is a global law firm. So law firms typically focus on clients and business development opportunities. This has been and will continue to be a primary goal. But each year our firm sets key priorities, and I align our alumni goals with these priorities. So for example, this year's priority is to grow our practices and market leadership through strategic lateral growth. And the alumni network collaborates, I plan on collaborating with HR more to recruit former attorneys that have left, like boomerangs, that's just an example of like what our primary goal is now in 2025.
So I know that from a previous presentation that we gave last year at NALP, that you have like a 3-year plan. And so how and when did you create that, and who's involved? How often do you refer to it? And I can bring it up here so we can kind of look through it, but just how did that kind of evolve?
Sure. So I joined Cyfarth in October 2021. And I want to say when I joined, I really hit the ground running. So after a week of being at the firm, I started traveling to the various offices to speak with our department chairs, our office managing partners, and attorneys, because I wanted to understand each office's culture and their vision for the alumni program. I want to say after 2 months, I presented the 3-year plan that you're viewing to our chair. And I want to say the plan has been followed. I mean, we had some minor adjustments made to align with the firm's key priorities each year, but like 95% of this plan has been followed each year.
That's amazing. Yeah. So kind of bringing it all together, right? So you have the sponsor and that buy-in, you have the goal. We know law firms are very much focused on business development.
Mhm.
And then you create this plan to kind of pull it all together. So it's wonderful to see just a simple outline. Sometimes people, I think, have this idea that a 3-year plan has got to be 10 pages and include all these things, but it really can just be a simple snapshot to kind of guide you throughout all these things, right?
Yes, it's
That's a,
very helpful.
yeah.
Um, And, also I want to just chime in that when I was hired, all of these, attorneys and our executive committee, they're looking to me as a thought leader because this is all new to them. So just really obviously like involving them and saying like, okay, like, what do you think about this? Or, what do you think about this plan? Like, it just helps them better understand everything as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it's not that it's stuck in stone, right? It can be adjusted to fit whatever's happening at the firm, but at least you have something that you can refer back to and kind of keep you on pace.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to see. So we'll stop showing that now and then kind of go back to, so as you kind of got started thinking about all this, you have the buy-in, you have the plan. When you started kind of putting things together, um, how important do you think it was to kind of outline the mission, the values, the purpose of the alumni program? Do you have any tips for people getting started kind of including that in there?
Yes, I think it's essential to understand and communicate the reason behind the alumni program. I did mention before the alumni manager is seen as a thought leader and helps others understand the program's value. I want to mention that law firms feel that this is a need to have, but then it's kind of like, okay, we know we need to have it, but some attorneys are like, I don't like, they don't understand why, or they don't understand how it can help them. So from my experience, I leverage past, I leveraged what worked and what didn't from all of the other alumni programs I built. One thing I want to mention is I collaborated with the branding team to create a meaningful name and tagline. A lot of companies have their company name Alumni Network. So I didn't want to do that. I created something, an acronym that's called SPAN, and it's Cyfarth People and Alumni Network. And the tagline is relationships that span a lifetime. I wanted to ensure the name reflects inclusivity, so current attorneys feel part of the network. I know in the past, I used to always try to explain to our attorneys, like, oh, you have to join our alumni network. And they would always say, Tanya, I'm not an alum. Like, are you trying to tell me something? I don't understand. So that was one thing that I changed when I came to Cyfarth. I wanted to include people in the name to help clarify that the network is both for alums and current employees. And hopefully down the road, I'm aiming to expand the network to include um, more departments beyond just attorneys.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, is that specific with law firms, there is a trend of including more employees or attorneys to start.
Mhm.
We do see in our research that the majority of programs do now include all employees, but when we say all employees, it does mix from type of business to business, right? So all employees is a great way because you never know who's going to go off maybe as an assistant to go work for another assistant, and kind of that's another way for business development as well. Or other staff that might go work for potential client companies. But overall, it's a phased approach, and a lot of places are starting to think about how employees go into that. So we do think that it's worth thinking about. It's a good idea to bring in the mission and values to kind of keep that cohesive story going, and to bring it in, just not to recreate it. You don't need to recreate it, but just to make that connection from the current place to being an alumni of that place. So that's very cool. Did you survey your alumni before you got started, or after?
Yeah, so I want to also note that when I came into the firm, I was told that we're starting from scratch. So meaning like we weren't sure if the email addresses were up to date. Also, it was 2021. We had a lot of we had a lot of business emails, but everybody was moving from job to job during that time. So I did send a survey, but it was a very small, it wasn't a lot of people. It was just like the alums that I verified email addresses for. And it was to get them to vote on the program's name before launching. So I believe that alums should be involved in naming their network. And plus, I thought it was something fun to do and get them excited. And I received a lot of responses. I thought it was a really enjoyable process. I do plan to conduct a comprehensive alumni survey this year now that our alumni portal has 1,500 members. So we grew it from 0 to 1,500, I want to say in the past 2 years. And we also have 2,200 alums and attorneys on our LinkedIn group as well.
Amazing. Yeah, we do agree that having like both a platform and the LinkedIn is great. Or often sometimes should you have one or both? Oh, both, right? Like, you want to
Yeah.
capture as many people as you possibly can everywhere. So every network your business is on should be every network the alumni is on, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not every social network, that's overkill in some cases, but LinkedIn, having a group, a singular group to manage, is a great idea. Um, and then surveying alumni, yeah, so there's so many ways to do it. I love that you just kind of did it off the name and created it as a fun thing. Like, we don't overthink these things sometimes, right? We can have fun with them. And that's kind of the point of being an alumni, is just now you don't have the pressure of being an employee, you just get to have fun and be still. So that's great. I do have survey templates if anyone is interested. I have surveys that you can do before you launch if you're just kind of fact finding, and I have surveys after you launch. So things you can do every year, every other year, to kind of just get feedback and see where you're going and how alumni are doing, and some of the ROI questions, which we'll get to later. But if you would like one of those templates, just feel free to send me a note. But otherwise, I think the last part of this planning sessions, we've kind of talked about the buy-in, we've talked about the planning and the 3-year goals and all those things, and how do we get some information to get started. But all of that is always usually trumped by the money. So how did budgeting work for you? What did you consider as you're kind of planning to get going?
I think that's a great question. Again, I started in October, and as you know, October is when you have to submit your budget. So, within a week or two, I was told that I need to submit a budget for 2023. So I really focused on the basic needs for the first year. I made sure to incorporate some money for our PeoplePath platform, money for swag, departure gifts for attorneys, conference related events. I'm a part of NALP, and I'm also a part of their alumni committee. So I go to their conference every year. And then after that, we had post-launch adjustments, and that means more like shifting our focus on engagement after the program launch. So I incorporated for 2023 more budget for alumni events and PeoplePath features. I know one example is People Data Labs, which I don't know, Jen, if you want to talk about that. But then also current budget considerations. We've allocated funds to hopefully expand our team. I'm a team of 1 due to the program growth and success. And I, moving forward, created 2 budgets for each year. One is like a need to have budget, and then below I have a nice to have budget, like just added things like if we had enough budget, what were like my dream things to have, you know? So that's how I worked with our budget from start to finish.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because usually the platform costs might be something separate, but it depends on everyone's makeup is a little different.
Mhm.
But yes, it depends on time of year. I know around this time of year is usually big budgets for most, but everyone has different fiscal years too, so it really is hard to give a great best practice. But in our benchmarking report, we find that at this point in 2024, most programs, or not most, the largest amount of money is usually over about $100,000, and there's different levels at which people have budgets. So if you're looking for more specific information on the budget, you can take a look at the report, and there's a chart in there of, what the expectations are, what best practices are. So definitely good to think about money as you get started, and each year will change. You might need more, you might need less. Depends on how many offices you're running. There's so many things to consider.
Mhm.
But having a little bit goes a long way, especially now that we can both do in-person and virtual events, which some of these virtual events don't cost anything. So, but the in-person ones usually need a little bit of cash. So that's pretty much what we had planned for the planning stage. So if there's any questions about getting started or before you launch into actually picking a platform, but if there's any thoughts or things, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll kind of move on to the preparing stage. Um, and so what we're thinking about here when we think about preparing is, okay, you've made the decision to have an alumni program. You are thinking about what that looks like, what goes into it. And so part of it is how technical are you, right? So Danya, so when you were launching the platform in any one of your three companies, there's a lot of technical knowledge kind of necessary to make that happen. How savvy would you say you are? And maybe if you aren't, who did you lean on for any technical help within your company?
Sure. So I don't consider myself that tech savvy, but I'm also a fast learner. I mentioned before that when we were talking and planning and preparing, one of the things was, okay, you're starting from scratch. So I actually reactivated, we had a LinkedIn alumni group way back when, and I was able to reactivate that as like a second LinkedIn and just start adding our alums onto LinkedIn so I can find out where they currently are, what their current title is, and then also get their personal email address because we had like 0 personal email addresses. After I did that, I really relied on the marketing technology team and also our PeoplePath team for the technical assistance. We had to consider how far back we want to go with the data. Do we want to go back like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, due to all of the email addresses that we had to find? And I think we said that we're going to go, we ended up going back like 15 years. And then we also reviewed the historical knowledge with our partners and departments. So that was more or less what I like who I leaned on when I didn't know the answers. It was really, we have a great marketing technology team at Sci and then also PeoplePath.
That's great to hear. I know those listening helped on Sci-Fi's launch will be excited to hear that. Um, it's there's just more there's more questions, right, to be answered. So it's not that you yourself have to be the technical person. Helps if you
Mhm.
have some background, but otherwise, as long as you've got the right IT and the marketing to kind of help you think through the options, things kind of move forward. And we do help on that side of things, the implementation part of it. So when you were kind of getting started and you were presented with a lot of options, like what kind of features do you think are the most important to start with? And did you hold any of them back maybe to a later date?
I want to say we released everything at once. We did wait on the group feature. So there's a group section on the portal that allows for various affinity groups. For example, a women's group. And that's something that's been on my radar. Like, I really want to create more affinity groups. I think it's important now that the network has grown so much. But like I said, we released everything else. We released the job section, like content for alumni spotlights, the events section, also alumni perks. So those were things that we had like a lot of content for, no issues.
Yeah. I often get asked about like what content to have at launch, and you just
Mhm.
need a few key tentpole things, right? And kind of a library of things before you start, and then this way you're kind of ahead of the game when you do start. And definitely directory, job board, those things are usually great to start. I do have an example I heard recently of a law firm holding back the directory to maybe fill it up a little bit before it kind of got launched. And plus, you have a benefit of sending out another email a few months later, being like, "Hey, we have this new feature." So we do recommend launching with everything at the start, but it is fun to kind of think through different ways of promoting some things. I always recommend something called a "Did you know" campaign. And some people may have heard me say this before, but I love the idea of someone logs in, they get really excited, they spend a few minutes poking around, and then as human nature, we kind of forget that these things are there. So what can you do to push people back to the platform? And so we can set up an automation. So let's say you register, 3 weeks later, you get an automated note. This is, "Hey, did you know we have a directory? Hey, did you know we have a job board?" So you kind of set it up over the course of time to get them back and to remind them that this resource exists, but especially when it's so new to them. We're in it every day, but we forget that they are not. So, what kind of information did you include in the registration process, like building out a profile, things like that?
So I kept it short and mainly focused on the essential data. I didn't want to have a registration process that was so long that our alums don't even want to register, you know? So I really collected basic demographics and contact info. I did have mandatory fields, which again was the personal email addresses required to capture key contact info. We did do an integration with PeoplePath and our interaction for seamless data management. And after they registered, there was more that the alum can fill out like in their profile after registering. So for example, there's historical professional data, there's a career profile, getting involved like in an about me section with hobbies and interests, but like we don't put that in the original registration form. It's just their profile if they want to just keep like updating it.
You bring up you kind of said this twice in two different things, which is less is more, right? So especially
Mhm.
when you're getting someone to sign up, you don't want them to be bogged down with a million questions. You want to think of those core things that you need. And then same with the groups. You mentioned it with groups that now you're starting to think through adding stuff as you've got more people and you kind of see where the interests lie.
Mhm.
So that's something that I always recommend as well is start with your key core things, right? The big things and not too many subsets, right? You don't want to get too bogged down because as you start with zero from scratch, right, you got to build that up. And so you don't have too many overwhelming options for people. Um, Create less barrier to entry is basically the way I like to put it.
Yeah.
But this has been great. So thinking about planning and preparing, we're halfway through here, and so I want to think through any questions anybody has on still that planning stage or this preparing stage before we start talking about the meat of launching a program. Any questions? Let me take a look through the chat here. We do have one question. So what do you think the key drivers of success are for launching a program aside from having that clear purpose?
Oh, meaning like what are besides business development? Okay,
Yeah.
so like brand ambassadors and also like I mentioned before, talent development. It depends on the company, right? So if it's a nonprofit company, maybe more like mentoring, they want people that have come and they've been in the program and to kind of like mentor kids that are now in the program. Also, brand ambassador is important because when people leave a job, they don't want the ex-employee to leave and say like bad things about the company or the nonprofit, like, wherever they are. I think the last thing you want is you want people to leave and say like, wow, they have this great alumni program. They're giving me like a really nice gift. They want me to keep in touch. Like they're having me come back. Like back in the day, usually when you say you're leaving, you just get like your W-2 in the mail and they're like, that's it. Like you never hear from them again. So I want to mention the brand ambassador thing and then also like the talent development aspect. Like if you have a regrettable loss and someone you really liked left and they were such an asset, like, there's boomerangs. Like a lot of our companies and in general, they're really focused on like the boomerang, like rehiring talent.
Mhm. Yeah, that you've hit on the nail on the head. The three major ones: business development, talent development, brand advocacy. Talent has been something we have seen more in law firms recently as well, and I think that's partially because if you have a focus on talent, yes, you get the boomerangs. That's absolutely great. You also get alumni referrals if they themselves don't come back. But the other part of it is I've seen a kind of a creep in these guidance offices almost, where they tend to place people at client companies or opportunity companies, which also helps with business development, right?
Yeah.
So there's a growing interest in the talent part of it because it all comes together, that business and the talent. And I love the brand. We have a case study with SAP where they mention that alumni mention the brand about 7 or 8 times a year, right? So they're just out there talking about your brand, helping you sell without realizing they're helping you sell, right? So that can't be bought. Those are things you have to do through goodwill and great experiences, right? So that's some of the research that we've done in the past years as well. It's just kind of helping alumni help you, right? And vice versa. So definitely important to think of those key drivers and always be aligning to what the business is doing, right? So if the business is focusing on business development, then that's what the program is doing. If it switches to talent for any reason, you kind of prioritize and move around. But for the most part, those three are in every alumni program in one way, shape, or form. Um, let's see, we have one other question. So beyond the purpose and benefits, the corporate, what can be the killer feature to get the point across about the importance of implementing during an interview, a candidate? So I don't know if I'm following the question. Beyond the purpose and benefits to the corporate, what can be the killer feature to get the point across about the importance of implementing a candidate during an interview? I'm not sure, Marco, could you kind of clarify what you mean implementing a candidate during an interview? Maybe there's some more information here. Well, while we wait for more information, we'll kind of set the stage for the next part. So planning and preparing, thinking about all the different ways that this could go, but really setting those plans in place before you jump into getting into the decision part of the program. So when you think about launching, right? So now you got to think about the time that it takes from the plan that you've made to launching and getting it out into the hands of alumni. What would you say are the most important things to think about when preparing for a launch?
I want to say one is just to keep in touch with our leadership, our executive committee, just to let them know of our planning and communication plan for the launch. They usually get very excited. Another one is that I did was send an email to our marketing and practice development team to have them view and test all links and content and gather their thoughts, because I don't want to just launch and not get any, any advice like, oh, we should implement this, or we should add this, or this link isn't working, or what's going on with this member directory. We hosted a soft launch and had attorneys opt in prior to having a launch with all of our alums. And then we also worked with PeoplePath to develop most of our communications for launch.
Very cool. Did you have any kind of like phased approach or anything?
Well, yeah, I think that was the phase approach. I believe, again, this was 2 years ago, but I believe we did a phased approach where we launched 2 weeks prior to our attorneys. And then we just let them take a look at the site and give their feedback. And then after we launched with them 2 weeks later, we did a communication plan and basically sent that communication to all of our alums through PeoplePath.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we have seen in recent years as well that people like to break it up by groups. And so giving it to your internal employees first kind of populates the directory a little bit, but also gets some good internal feedback before it goes out publicly to the alumni themselves. And so it could be just one alumni email, it could be many alumni emails, retirees kind of subset. There's a lot of different options for once it's actually somewhere else, but having a few people in there first is usually a good best practice. So did you do anything unique when you were thinking, when you were getting to launch, when you're planning through that stage?
Yes. So, well, a few months after launch, we did an internal engagement campaign and we implemented a contest. We wanted to tap into the culture of fun competition, right? So as I mentioned, we were focusing on engagement and we wanted to have attorneys, all on our portal. So Jen, I don't know, do you have that chart that I did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Engagement challenge, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This one?
Yes. So it was during the month of May, and you know, our offices that I think they just love competitions. They love contests. Like they all want to make sure like they're the winner. I had, by the way, no idea. So we had like we have 18 offices, and our office managing partners were just making sure that all of the attorneys in their office registered because they wanted to win. They wanted to be the winning title, and the prize was just lunch for the staff. And it was so successful that the end of May, we had 700 attorneys opt into the network. Which is pretty big. And it was so big and so popular that 3 offices won, not just one. It was like, I think we had New York, Seattle, and our LA Century City office. And, we obviously know that every office has, Seattle's a very small office. Like New York is pretty big. So we based it on the offset, the difference of the office headcounts, the contest was based on the percentage registered. So it was
Very
fun.
smart.
Like I said, I like to like do fun things, but
Mhm.
it was I didn't know like the OMPs from different offices, like, well, where are we at now? Like, what's the chart? Like, we're number 3, it was a whole thing.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it depends on firm culture, but I do find competition sparks a lot of things in some people. So definitely encouraging internal engagement that way. Internal engagement always is always the hardest, right? Like I was the number one question I used to get was how do you get partners involved? Because partners are busy people. They're super senior. They've got a million things on their plate. They're kind of driven by their own goals. But once you start to get that competition, that fun part in there, and then also connect it back to that goal and that buy-in that you have from other people, you start to see some real success, some real magic, right? And so it's very cool. I love this challenge. I reference it all the time.
I also did, wait, Jen, I don't even know if you know about this. I went to the partner retreat and I got like I got almost like a little a wheel that's spin to win. So the attorneys would say, what is this spin to win? And they spin the wheel and it's questions like, okay, name one alumni spotlight we've had on the portal, or name, like just like what does SPAN stand for? Or just to kind of like get the fun and for them to really understand more about the program since we launched a few months ago. And then I had all this swag, so they would like be able to like that was like their prizes.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like getting it in the hands or in front of them at where they are, right? So they're at town hall meetings, they're at office meetings, they're offsites, like all those things that they're at, bring alumni to that in some way, shape, or form. And the more fun that it is, the more memorable, the more likely they are to get rid of some of that gruff exterior and actually just have fun with it, right? So that's awesome to hear. Um, so this is a great example. Like I said, we'll share it when we send out the slides and recordings, but let's see, do I have any other kind of questions before I continue in here? Maybe not. So what kind of communications did you plan for launch, for after launch? Like what did that look like?
So I mentioned the communications that I planned for launch. Also, I did a communication to our attorneys, like, why join? Like, how can this benefit you? Because I really wanted them to understand. And with alums, we did communications like, okay, like, how can this help you? It's always about like what is going to benefit you. People aren't going to just join another network. I'm sure everyone is just joining some besides like their college, their law school, there's so many different alumni networks. So it has to really cater to like, what can we provide you? And so we had some communications around that. We also did an alumni video of our chair. It was a short 2-minute video that we have on our portal that just talks about like the benefits of joining and what we, are focusing on and how like alums are important to us and our culture. And then after launch, again, we focused on engagement the second year. So every month I sent out a Span Scoop newsletter. So we had a new alumni spotlight, new in-house jobs, complimentary CLE or PLI. And I also partnered with the ACC, Association of Corporate Counsel. For those of you who don't know who they are, it's basically a really good benefit for attorneys that have left and gone in-house, and they are gone in-house for the first time. So it basically like gives them a 6-month membership, complimentary, and it gives them $200 in educational credits, like invites them to all these, invites them to webinars and events so they can meet other people that are in-house. And I want to say, Jen, the last thing I did recently was I completed an external engagement contest, and it was during the month of October, and you can win like $100 Amazon gift card or donation in their name with one of our 3 charities. So I tried to like think outside the box, and do some sort of external engagement campaign, which is working. Like it went pretty well. I mean, we didn't get 700, but we got enough.
Yeah, it's percentage, right? So that's great. There's a lot. I think you're kind of mentioning a lot of these acronyms, right? So PLI is the Practicing Law Institute, Continued Education. ACC was the Association of Corporate Counsel. So law firms have a lot of external committees and organizations and resources, which is wonderful. NELP is one you've mentioned, which is something we've presented at together before, which is help me out with that one, National Association of Legal
Law
Placement.
placement. Sorry about that. Yes, National Association of Law Placement. So
No, so it's wonderful to see, because I do think it's a bit unique. Some of the industries don't necessarily have all of these resources, but the cool thing about these is they do make a lot of these public. So a lot of the information you're saying is very universal. It's across variety of industries and can be taken for most programs. So if you come across those organizations, you might find some good articles written by some really interesting people and programs around the world. So that's wonderful to hear. And it's cool to think about the focus on engagement, right? That is the number one question we get afterwards. It's something we've started to add into our benchmarking report. So we've started thinking about like logins and newsletter open rates and click rates and event attendance and RSVPs, things like that, basics that we could get. And we're adding to it all the time. But essentially, we always want to be thinking about motivations. Why does someone participate in these programs? And so they're looking for value. They're looking for some value in some way, whether they a sense of belonging or a transactional need. They're always coming and going. So you might have, 1,500 people in your group, but not all 1,500 are going to need you today. They're going to kind of come and go. They also have different interests, right? You have people who are on the younger side of things, on the older side of things, more mature, have different parts of their career path. So maybe they're just looking for the next role. Maybe they're looking for a board role. So I think you're offering a lot of really interesting things to keep kind of all of those segments engaged in some way. So it's really exciting to hear. For any of the programs you've done, the competitions, the challenges, the features, did you soft launch anything, kind of test it out first and then kind of open it up to everybody?
yes, there's a lot of testing involved before launching. I tested myself. We had a small group of people that actually helped me launch the program. We had like our marketing technology guy at my firm. We had our marketing director and then our project manager. So like we were constantly testing, and then I'm in the marketing I'm in the marketing department, so I know some alumni managers sit in different departments, but that's where I sit. So relied on our marketing team to really like come in and test as well and give their feedback. So
Yeah, that is a wonderful way to do it. I've also heard of small pilots in some places,
mhm.
with an office to do something. I've also heard of people maybe just finding 10 or 15 people to soft launch something with or give some early feedback on, just to see how it goes and if there's any tweaks that need to be made. So there's a variety of reasons to do some soft launching, not required, but it is a good best practice. So that's basically our section on launching as well. So we've gotten through planning, preparing, launching, thinking through just all the things to think about and plan ahead and get some fun involved. So we're kind of entering into this last stage here of excelling. So if there are any questions so far, please do put them in the chat. But otherwise, what does success look like to you as we get past the launch and into the meat of the program?
Sure. Jen, do you want to put that slide up that shows everything since launch?
Sure.
Okay.
This one?
Yes. So I feel as if this is what success looks like to me. We launched 2 years ago and we had 0 email addresses, and now we have 1,500 members on the portal. We had 170 in-house positions on our job board, 20 in-person alumni events. I feel like half of them were in the past 2 months. The alumni perks, which I discussed, and we had 18 alumni spotlights. So we had almost like a spotlight every single month, which is pretty hard to find because first of all, like you want to find someone that is really interesting and that has done so much after they left. And then they have to accept, right? I mean, it's a progress, but it was a process, but it was really good. Also, I want to say that I was always the one like advocating for this program, and I'm so passionate about this and telling our attorneys. And so now when they leave, the first thing they ask in HR is like, wait, can I still be a part of SPAN? Like, can I still get invited to the events? I've had attorneys leave and call me and say, look, like we're going in-house, and once we're settled, we really want to like give the firm business, and like if we don't like it, do you think we can come back? And I'm like, you could do whatever you want. Like, so like I'm not the one chasing, like they're the ones now like coming to me. I know when our chair was really into the in-house job board, it was just a thought that she had last year, and it is so popular now. I have all of these attorneys like that are talking to their clients who are looking to have a general counsel on their team. So right away, like they think of me to put it on the job board. The same for alums, like, or if their position was eliminated or they, don't are looking for something else, like they look at the job board. We send it out every single month to all of our attorneys to have them circulate it, because look, if we can help an alum or if we can help a client, like this is great for our firm and the company in general. So I think that was really successful. I achieved almost every step of the 3-year plan. And I'm also really tracking business development. In fact, I was talking to Jen last week, and I said that I'm going to speak at the NALP conference, the National Association of Law Placement conference in April. And I'm going to talk about, my topic is show me the revenue, how to turn law firm alums into clients. So I think, the last thing I want to say, what success looks like to me is just aligning our alumni goals with the company's key priorities, the firm's key priorities, because we're living in a world where everything is just constantly changing, and we just have to make sure that we're all collaborating and aligned at and to make sure that we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's a very poignant statement, right? So to go back to kind of the questions about success and how do we convince others to see the value in it the way that we see it. And so it's just constantly showing them the solution to their problems, right? And so it may not be a silver bullet, but it does move the needle. And so tracking, and I'm so glad to hear you're tracking business development. I know that's something that has been kind of a struggle for the last couple of years, because it's not just one area. You have to connect to multiple systems, and getting access to financial data is not always the easiest. But when you can start to showcase those stories and really get some hard numbers, it does definitely move the needle a bit to get some more buy-in. So I think you got lucky in the sense that you had people right from the very beginning that were like, yep, we get it. Some people are not so lucky, and so they have to work a little harder in that beginning stage to kind of make that business case. But definitely looking at the potential, seeing where people are, understanding how many alumni you have at client companies, at potential client companies. So if business development is the goal, just finding out how many you have can be a great starting point. And then you can kind of make the case after the program launches that the numbers get bigger and better. But just showing opportunity sometimes is really a great place to start. So love to hear that success looks like a comprehensive view to you, though, that alumni are engaged, that employees are engaged, that the goals are being met. All of those things kind of make up a good triangle of power, I guess is the way to put it. But we did have that 3-year strategy. You did kind of mention adjusting a little bit. How often have you adjusted your strategy since you launched?
I want to say I'm going into year 3 right now. So I did mention the future's changing. Everybody is all about like AI, innovation, AI. And, like 2 years ago, I didn't even know this existed. I didn't even know this existed. So we tweaked that to include like how can we incorporate AI that benefits us and the alums. Like what can we do to help them, like if it's like matching their like job search like based on their profiles and PeoplePath, like what can we do to make it easier. I think also I mentioned this before, we're starting to incorporate like the in-house job board opportunities and work with talent. This has been an explosion of popularity, I think, not just for my firm, but for other firms as well. I know what doesn't work. And I did mention, like, I did 6 alumni events in a month, and I'm just slowly recovering from it. But I think just to have like spaced out more strategic alumni events, because it has become very popular. Like everyone loves to reconnect in person and come to these events. I know last year when we started launching, like people were still kind of on the COVID, like not so sure we want to be in public, but I feel as if everyone is back to normal now, or they're like definitely excited about seeing people. And I want to, how often have you adjusted your strategy? I really want to focus on, survey results, debriefs, activities, engagement, like tracking BD opportunities. I know we talked about that, but that's like, really, it's in our strategy, but more tailored, I want to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love the idea of that. 2 years ago, we had no idea that AI was ever going to be a really big
Right?
driver. Now it's all anyone can talk about. So the economics of the world, the election next week, so many things will change. Just you can have the best laid plans, right? But
Yeah.
something will come along to make that. And so having an adjustable plan, having a simple plan that allows for it to be adjusted, I think is also an important takeaway. So we have a couple of questions, which we'll get to. So if you have more, please drop them in. We're only have about five minutes left. So looking forward to anything that comes in here. But the last question I have for you, Danya, is do you have any advice for anyone who's just getting started?
Yes. I want to say when I first got started in corporate alumni in 2017, I think I spoke to every single alumni manager that I could find, which weren't many. And one of them was Jen. I think to talk to as many alumni managers as you can in the corporate alumni space, because you're a team. I mean, I know that certain companies have like more than a team of one, but I'm a team of one. So I can't like sit and talk to myself, So I think that's important, and to do your research. There's like so many articles out there now, the webinars. I mean, when I started, we really didn't have that as much research as we have now. this is pretty self-explanatory, but get buy-in from leadership. I know that I was lucky enough to start 3 programs and I was hired to start them. But if you're in a company now and you want to start it, like you're gonna have to do your research and get buy-in from leadership. And then lastly, I want to say develop a plan that fits your culture. So every culture is different. I mean, I know we just got that question that said, okay, what other, like goals besides business development? So like I know, there's nonprofits, like what's their culture like? What are they focused on, like mentoring? Are they focused on bringing people back? Like obviously like law firms, like is it going from business development to talent like focus? So just really like be in tune with your company's priorities and adjust.
Yeah, definitely. Great advice overall. We do have a couple questions here. So, how many internal and attorneys have you invited, and how many external alumni do you have? And what is the split, internal, external, and the 1,500 membership? So, maybe just giving a general breakdown of that 1,500. What's the kind of general split?
I want to say 50-50 right now.
Cool.
Yeah, so again, we did get like most of our attorneys at that internal engagement contest, and then and like a little bit more. But it's also interesting because when our attorneys leave, they're automatically turned into alums in the portal. Like we just have to update like where they are now and stuff like that. So
Cool. One question came in. Can you explain the format of your alumni events? Are they informal social gatherings or more formal at the offices with catering, etc.? They're thinking about it for their budget for next year.
yeah, so the first year we had it at offices because a lot of our attorneys wanted to like show their new space. And I didn't want to say like, I don't know if that's a draw, but I was new and we did it, and it really wasn't, a lot of people didn't really come. So now we do it outside, and we do it at really, it's more social. I prepare speaking remarks based on the office location to our OMPs, like our office managing partners, for them to like give a 2-minute talk. But it's more about like reconnecting, because honestly, people haven't seen each other in like 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And I try to pick some like a cool location. I know in New York, I keep I keep doing it in these like super hard member onlys, and all of these alums are like, this is great, because they can never get in. But now like I'm doing it at these really hard places, and I'm almost like, okay, I don't know where I'm gonna do it next year because I can't keep like going over the top. But like I really think like where you have it is a draw, especially in New York and also in other offices as well. But I I do I do have a budget for that, and I tell the offices if it goes over, then they're responsible like out of their office budget.
Yeah, that's how we used to do ours too.
Yeah.
For other examples, when I used to run my program, it was one social event and one content-based event per year was kind of the requirement for each office.
Mm.
They kind of hit both motivations. So someone might be extroverted, introverted, that kind of thing. Might just have different interests or different requirements. You're kind of hitting all segments. But as far as ideas go, you're right. The place is the draw, and I have that same issue with our PeoplePath events, trying to find really fun ones to do every year. But ultimately, it's whatever you want to have fun with. I've seen everything from wine tastings to golf outings to magic shows with magicians to ballpark family events. You name it, you can do it, right? It's just as long as it fits the mission, the values, the purpose, and the culture of the company. So. I know we're 1 minute over, but last question here. If budget wasn't an issue, what would you do next? How would you take it further?
If budget wasn't an issue,
Yeah.
I
So
would create like an entire alumni team. I would have like a career manager. I would have like an alumni coordinator. I would have like a specific data, only for alumni stuff. I mean, you don't want to ask me if budget was an issue. Like I would have a huge, you know, Black like alumni gathering, like a homecoming, like somewhere really like really elaborate to like do the connection for that. I think, there are so many things I want to do, but again, I'm just one person. So if I was able to actually create like a good team, I almost want to say like sky's the limit,
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I would do the exact same. More people, more fun, more elaborate, just because, why not? Have fun with it. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. I know we're a minute or two over. Appreciate everyone who stayed over. But thank you for this. I think people got a lot out of it. I know I did. And we will be sending out the recording, these slides. And if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with either of us at any time. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day and happy Halloween.
Thanks, everyone.